I got to ask Panthers fans. I want you to tell me. Like, what were your thoughts heading into 2020? What did you want to see out of this team? What were you hoping for with Matt Rule? Did you like the Matt Rule hire then? Do you like the Matt Rule hire now? Do you think he's a quality NFL head coach? Do you like the culture that he's built? Do you think this is a team on the come up? Are you pissed because this team potentially won just enough games to not be in position in the top 3 to 5 to be where they could get the quarterback that maybe they wanted? I'm curious. I'm really, really curious because I look at this Carolina Panthers season in 2020 and I say, you made a big time, long-term commitment to Matt Rule. Which if you're gonna go get a guy like Matt Rule in the scenario and situation that you were in, you were moving on from Cam Newton and everything else, like, yes, go make a big commitment to this guy so that way you kind of set the tone that he's going to be the dude for a while and we're going to build the culture around him. I get that. I totally understand that. And they go out and sign a Teddy Bridgewater, and it was nice to see Teddy get his money. I'm happy for him there, especially for a guy several years ago with that devastating leg injury. Almost lost his leg. Like, cool to see a guy work to a point and come back. They, take what he did in those 5 starts for the Saints in 2019 and parlay that into a big money deal. That's cool to see. I'm happy for him. He's a good young man. But then they went all defense in the draft, which I thought was really interesting and frankly kind of strange. It doesn't mean that they picked bad players necessarily. And certainly when you look at them drafting a guy like Jeremy Chin, they certainly got a stud there. But it just seems like the approach that they took was not aligned with the modern reality of the league. Number one, you need a long-term answer at the quarterback position or you have nothing. Number two, you've gotten more and more to the point where offense matters more than defense in the league. Doesn't mean you want to have a turnstile on the defensive side of the ball, giving up 30-plus points every single game, because you will not win a championship doing that. But even great defenses, elite defenses, will have games where they struggle. And you need your offense to be able to bail them out and score some points. And if you don't have an offense that could put a team on its back, you will not win a championship. It is just that simple. So I was really kind of torn with the Panthers' approach. Thought some of the players they took made sense for where they took them. Thought they were good players. Don't necessarily agree and align with the approach. But all that said, they got off to a 3-2 start, and that was without Christian McCaffrey for the vast majority of the season. I think he played, 3 games? So the big money, MVP level player on the offensive side of the ball in your first year under Matt Rule, you get him for 3 games, but yet you start out 3-2? It's not bad. I mean, it pretty much fell apart after that. Reality caught up with them. But hey, you saw a little something there, I think, at the beginning. But what you saw as the year went along was this team only got 3 games out of Christian McCaffrey. And when you invest that money in the cap that you do to the running back position, you need him to play more than 3 games. Certainly that was a negative impact of a big degree to this offense. But Teddy Bridgewater, I think, proved more than anything else that he is a bridge starter. And Bridgewater equals bridge starter. He's not the long-term answer. He's like an Alex Smith type of quarterback. And he's a guy that can hang around in the league and he could be a starter. But if you're talking about truly playing championship level football, he's just not going to be that guy. Now, DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson had good seasons with them. They both went over 1,000 yards receiving. So you talk about bringing in Robbie Anderson. He had the connection for Matt Rule from their time at Temple. Like, that was a free agent signing that worked splendidly for the Panthers. And DJ Moore, former first-round pick, you see him coming into his own. So if you're the Panthers, you're not totally discouraged. You're thinking, hey, we got these 2 game-breaking type of wide receivers on the outside that should be in position to both go over 1,000 yards again next year. Curtis Samuel, as your kind of slot number 3 option, had a pretty good season as well. And now he's a free agent, so will you bring him back or not remains to be seen. But assuming then that you also bring a Christian McCaffrey back into the fold, stands to reason that the offense should at least be a little bit better next year. But defensively, this was a young defensive unit in some ways. They invested a lot in the draft on that side of the ball, so it's got to be a little disheartening to have Quan Short go out early in the year with an injury and miss the rest of the year, and then showed some of the sporadic flashes of good that they showed, but then showed some real bad and have 8 games where they gave up 27 or more points. They were a middle-of-the-road unit statistically, which is probably just as much a reflection of the coaching that they got as in terms of the actual talent that they have. It was a middle-of-the-road defensive unit. Some games they play somewhat well, and other games they got torched pretty badly. And now as you go into 2021, you want to hope that that investment that you made in the draft on the defensive side of the ball really pays off next year. Because in the offseason, you're not going to have a ton of free money to spend. You got maybe, 10 to 15 million or so in cap space as it stands right now. You got free agents like Russell Okung and John Miller on that offensive line. Are you going to be able to keep one or both of them? Curtis Samuel, like I said, he finally, I think, started to come into his own this year. Are you going to re-sign him, or are you going to risk losing him off of that offense? Taylor Moton, their other offensive tackle, you're going to bring him back. Mike Davis, I think had some good spells in relief of the injured Christian McCaffrey this year. But how much do you really want to invest in him? But you look at this Carolina Panthers team, and I think it's this easy. It really, really is. As they invested their entire draft in defense last year, they must, and this is not negotiable, they must invest their entire draft on the offensive side of the ball this year. They must. They absolutely must. Because if they don't, they're going to be in a similar spot where maybe their defense gets a little better next year, but their offense still isn't that great. They have to invest on the offensive side of the ball, and that starts at the quarterback position. And with them picking 8th in the first round, Carolina could be in a spot where they get the 3rd or 4th best quarterback in this draft to come to them. Maybe the 3rd, whether that's a Wilson or a Fields, although I feel that's unlikely. It's still very early in the process, so a lot could change. But they're also sitting there at 8 where maybe trading up to 3 or 4 isn't so cost prohibitive that you can't do it. Because Teddy's not the long-term answer. Let's be clear. He is not. So maybe you want him there as a bridge starter. Maybe you want him there as a backup to mentor a younger quarterback. But you do not want to continue to build your team around Teddy Bridgewater. It's just not the guy he is. I'm sorry, he's not. I like Teddy. I loved Teddy coming out of Louisville in that 2014 draft, but you have to face reality. He's not that level of dude. Bridge starter, average starter. Not going to win a ton with him. But you got to get the quarterback right. And personally, I think if they're in the position or they're close to the position, they've got to strike and they've got to take the quarterback. And you wonder that 3-2 start really comes back to bite this Panthers team. And that's where I was asking earlier in this video for Panthers fans, are you pissed that this team didn't full out tank this year? Are you pissed that they signed Teddy? Would you rather have had them go with their old former cohorts that joined the league in '95, the Jacksonville Jaguars, and potentially only win one game and contend for that number 1 overall pick where you could have gotten the Trevor Lawrence spot, or maybe at least the 2nd overall pick so you get the quarterback that isn't Trevor Lawrence that you like the most? I'm just curious, because I know if I was a Panthers fan, I'd probably be a little bit frustrated about it, because you're saying at 8, you're having to hope that the right guy falls to you, or you have to go give up other draft pick capital and potentially impact the rest of your draft this year, or maybe even next year, to move up a few spots to still get that quarterback. All for a couple of wins that meant nothing in the grand scheme of things. But I think offensively, I think tight end is a big need. They've never really effectively replaced Greg Olsen and his productivity from the past. I think you look at the offensive line, they're certainly going to need to invest there, because I'm not sure that they're going to be able to bring back all of their free agents there. Running back, I think you want to get a better complement to Christian McCaffrey, a younger option there that could spell McCaffrey more, provide a little bit more of a power element to your team, and be there in case McCaffrey gets hurt, and that way your offense doesn't have to that significantly fundamentally change. Defensively, maybe you want to have some help in the secondary, maybe whether free safety, strong safety, probably doesn't matter. But for the Panthers, I think now Matt Rule in his first year there, in their first draft under the Matt Rule regime, they went heavy on defense. This draft has to be heavy on offense. Maybe it's not every single pick, but that first one sure as hell better be. Because if they go out there, and I don't care who you think is a great talent there at pick 8, if you take a defensive player at pick 8, you deserve every bit of mocking that you possibly get, because that's clown show shit right there. Now maybe, as you start to hear reports of names that could potentially be available, like a Carson Wentz or a Deshaun Watson, do you go out and trade the future draft picks to get those guys now? Potentially. That's a conversation you maybe have at that point if you're Carolina. But I don't know. Still better to try and draft and develop your own guy. It's not always going to work, that's true. But that doesn't mean you don't do it. Like, you just have to have faith and confidence in your process, trust what you do, and trust that you get it right. But they got to get a quarterback before they go into next offseason. If they don't, nothing else will matter with this team. Period.